In this lecture, we're going to do a demo on working with translation, rotation, and scaling. Let's go to Qt Creator and do this. Okay, here we are in Qt Creator. We're going to create a new project. It's going to be a Qt Quick application as usual. We're going to call it Transforms Demo. Save it in a location on our drive. Choose our Qt version. Choose our kit and finish. So what we want to do is put a set of rectangles in this window here and apply the transforms when you click on the rectangle. We are going to do translation, rotation, and scaling. Because we don't want to be repeating ourselves, we want to create a component and use it all over again. So we want to come here to this QML resource file, add new, Qt. We want to add the QML file, and we want to call it clickable rectangle, because that's what it is. We don't want to do anything fancy here. We want to change this import to import the latest version of Qt Quick, and we want to turn this into a rectangle. We don't want to do anything fancy. We want to give it an ID. Let's call this root, and we are going to declare a signal here to notify us when the mouse area inside this rectangle is clicked. And inside, we want to define our mouse area. Notice that we didn't put any parentheses on the signal here. This is possible in QML. We want the mouse area to fill the parent. And when it is clicked, we want to emit this signal. And you already know how to emit a signal. We call it like we call another JavaScript function. So we're going to say a root clicked like this. Okay, our component here is done. We can come back to main QML and start working with it. We want to change the title here to Transforms Demo. We want to put in a rectangle that is going to fill the window. Its ID is going to be container. We want it to fill the parent, and we want it to have a color. Let's put in beige. And inside, we want to have a mouse area that is going to fill this rectangle. Let's say parent, because it is the parent of this mouse area. And we want to know when it is clicked. And this is where we are going to do a few changes to the rectangles that we are about to define. So we are going to go down here and define our rectangles. We are going to use clickable rect, the type that we just defined in here. The ID is going to be rect1 ID. We want the width to be 100, same as height. We want it to start at an X position of 50 and a Y position of 100. And when the rectangle is clicked, notice that we can say on clicked, because we declared this signal here in the component here. We can define a handler of this signal here. Okay, this is the convenience of using components. So when you click on this rectangle, the first one, we want to translate on the x-axis. We are going to increase the x coordinate of this rectangle here. So we're going to say x plus equal, let's add 20, for example. Okay, we should also give it a color so that we can differentiate them by just looking at them. The color is going to be red. We want to copy this rectangle because it's going to be mostly the same. We are just changing the transforms that we do when we click. Here we are doing a translation on X. This is going to be rect2 ID. We want to put this at an X of 250 by default. And when you click it, we want to add on its rotation property. Okay, we want to add to the rotation angle. We're going to add 15. We're going to see how this looks. And the color is going to be green. Let's copy, put in our third rectangle. By the way, we should flag here that we are working on rotation. Here we are going to work on scaling. It should be rect3id here, and it's going to start at the next location of 450. Here we are going to add on the scale property. So we're going to say scale plus equal, let's add 0.05. We're going to see how this looks. These are the rectangles that are going to be contained in the window here. And the window is going to have a background of this rectangle here that is beige. We want to know when the user clicks outside of these rectangles, and we want to put the rectangles back to their starting position. When you click here, rect1 should go back to x50. So we're going to say rect1 id x equals 50. This is how you bring them back. Rect2 id rotation. The rotation should go back to 0. So we're going to say rotation equals 0. Rect3 id is going to go back to the scale of 1, because this is the default scale of our component. And these properties, rotation and scale, I don't think we talked about them before, but you can find them in the documentation. So let's look at the rectangle, for example. Click to find it, look at properties. Okay, you see that it inherits item. And if we look at properties that we have here, we are going to find, let's scroll down a little bit. You can find rotation, you can find scale here. And if you click, they're going to tell you exactly what they do. This property holds the rotation of the item in degrees clockwise around its transform origin. We're going to look at transform origin in a moment. But for now, we just want to run the application and see how it looks. Okay, our app is here, the third rectangle. We should change the color. But if we click on the red rectangle, you see that it moves to the right. Okay. If we click on the green rectangle, you see that it rotates around. And if we click on the third rectangle, you see that it grows in size. This is scaling in action. Okay, if you click outside, you see that they go back to where they belong. Okay. Click outside, they go back. We should go back and change the color of the third rectangle to be blue so that we can differentiate these things. Okay, now I want you to see how you can work with transform origin. This really makes sense on rotation and scaling. If you look at the second rectangle, if we click on it, you see that it is rotating and the center of the rotation is in the middle of the rectangle. You click on the third rectangle, you see also that it is scaling, but the center of the scaling behavior is in the center here. You can actually modify this center of the transform by changing the transform origin property. I think we also looked at this here. This is the property that holds the origin point around which scale and rotation transform. Okay, you can specify your transform to happen around the top left, the top right. You can specify any of these enumerations here. So we're going to go back to our code, look at the rotation transform that we did here, and say transform origin. This is how you influence it. Let's look at the documentation and see what we can pass it here. We can say item bottom right, for example. Why not copy this and try it in our code? Qt is great, right? Okay, our rectangle, the green one, is going to rotate around the bottom right point. Let's run the application. Okay, the bottom right point is here. If we click, you see that our rotation happens around it. Let's bring it back to the start by clicking the beige rectangle. We can keep playing with this. Come back to our code. Let's say top right. Why not? Top right. If we run again, it's going to rotate around the top right corner of the rectangle. And this is what we have. You can also do the same on the third rectangle where we apply a scaling transform. So let's copy this, for example. Put it down here. and say bottom left. Why not? Let's run and see our scaling happening here. You see that the bottom left is fixed and we are scaling in the other directions. I hope this makes sense. And if you happen to need to do these kind of changes, you can play with this transform origin property of your item in your QML code. Okay, and you can really see that the transform origin is the point around which your transform is going to pivot. This brings us to the end of this lecture. I hope it shed some light on how you can work with these kinds of transforms. And really, nothing prevents you from mixing and matching them. For example, you can take the third rectangle and also apply a rotation property. Okay, so that these things happen together. Let's run. And if you click, you see that it is rotating and scaling at the same time. Of course, if you click on the beige rectangle, things go back to normal because we are resetting everything here. In the next lecture, we are going to introduce you to the fascinating world of working with animations in QML. I'll see you there.